Today we're going to look at the most bizarre deaths caused by food. From an old man who neglected to cut his food into smaller pieces, causing him to choke, to eating chili for a challenge gone wrong. Let's dive straight into it. It was July 12th, 2018, a warm evening in Delhi. The streets were wet from rain earlier in the day, and the air carried a mix of food smells, traffic fumes, and damp ground. People crowded around food stalls near the bus stop. Many office workers stopped to grab something to eat before going home, while buses honked and moved through the traffic. Among them was 36-year-old Rajiv Sharma, an office clerk who had worked late that night. Rajiv often avoided small food carts, but there was one vendor near his bus stop he trusted. He had eaten there before without problems. The man sold fried bread, chickpea curry, and cold sodas kept in glass bottles. On that night, Rajiv ordered a plate of food and asked for a chilled drink to go with it. The vendor worked quickly, serving several customers at once. Besides his cooking setup, he kept a few reused plastic bottles. One held water for mixing drinks, while another, unlabeled, contained a strong cleaning solution he had used earlier to scrub pans. In the rush of serving, he accidentally poured some of the chemical into Rajiv's glass, diluting it with soda. The mistake went unnoticed. Rajiv sat on a small wooden bench by the stall as he ate. After a few bites, he lifted the glass and drank. Almost right away, he started coughing hard and bent forward, spilling some of the liquid onto the ground. People nearby later said he gagged and held his chest. Thick spit mixed with blood showed at his mouth as he struggled to breathe. People around him shouted for help as he dropped the glass. The vendor froze in shock while bystanders rushed to Rajiv's side. One man offered water, but another quickly stopped him, knowing it could make things worse. Rajiv's breathing was fast and shallow. With no ambulance nearby, several men helped him into an auto rickshaw. During the ride, his condition declined quickly. His voice became hoarse, and burns around his mouth and tongue grew darker. Passengers in the rickshaw later recalled hearing him groan softly as his body stiffened, his breath short and irregular. The driver pushed through traffic as fast as he could toward the nearest hospital. Doctors at the emergency ward recognized the signs of caustic ingestion right away. Rajiv's throat and stomach had suffered chemical burns, and his airway was swelling. They attempted to secure his airway with a breathing tube, while giving fluids through an IV line. Nurses prepared emergency equipment, and suction was used to clear his mouth and throat. Despite these efforts, the swelling and internal bleeding were severe. Within half an hour of arrival, Rajiv went into cardiac arrest. Doctors performed CPR and continued resuscitation attempts, but the damage was too extensive. He was pronounced dead that same evening. News of the case spread quickly through the neighborhood. Police visited the food stall, collecting samples of the liquid and questioning the vendor. The container, a reused soda bottle with no label, was found beside the stall's supplies. Authorities later confirmed it contained a concentrated cleaning chemical commonly used to scrub cooking surfaces. Framed photos of him as prayers were recited. Neighbors gathered outside the home, offering support and food to the grieving family. Police opened a case against the vendor, which covers death by negligence. Local health officials also announced new rounds of inspections on food stalls. Public warnings reminded vendors never to keep chemicals in unmarked bottles near cooking areas. In the months that followed, some districts tightened rules requiring vendors to separate cleaning products from food supplies, though enforcement remained inconsistent. For the people who had been at the bus stop that night, the memory of what happened stayed fresh. What had started as an ordinary meal turned into a sudden tragedy, one caused not by spoiled food, but by a preventable mistake. It was February 14th, 2019, when Lyra Kalin's relentless pursuit of culinary perfection led her to the most dangerous kitchen in Los Angeles. At 38, Lyra had built a fearsome reputation as the city's most unforgiving food critic. Standing 5 feet 4 inches with sharp green eyes and silver hair, she wielded her pen like a scalpel for Los Angeles Gourmet magazine. Her weekly column had shuttered 3 restaurants in the past year. Obsessively health-conscious and razor-thin, Lyra approached every meal with scientific precision and zero tolerance for mediocrity. That Valentine's evening, she arrived at Molecule Restaurant with her girlfriend Rachel Martinez, a 34-year-old food photographer whose warm personality balanced Lyra's cold professionalism. Rachel had been documenting their relationship through food, hoping to soften Lyra's increasingly bitter worldview. Head chef Isabella Santos, a 29-year-old prodigy trained under Ferran Adrià, had staked her career on impressing the notorious critic. Isabella's hands trembled as she served each course of the frozen fire tasting menu, knowing Lyra's review could make or destroy her reputation overnight. The evening progressed with molecular gastronomy theatrics, edible flowers, spherified olives, and foams. Lyra remained stone-faced, taking meticulous notes while Rachel captured each presentation. At 9:45 p.m., Isabella made a fatal decision. Desperate to salvage what she sensed was becoming another devastating review, she invited Lyra into the kitchen to witness the preparation of their signature frozen fire cocktail sphere. The dessert required liquid nitrogen to freeze a cocktail mixture into a delicate shell. David Kim, the 26-year-old sous chef handling the liquid nitrogen, had performed this technique hundreds of times, but with Lyra's intimidating presence looming over his shoulder, his steady hands betrayed him. As he poured the -320-degree liquid nitrogen onto the cocktail mixture, Lyra leaned closer, demanding to observe every detail. The splash happened in milliseconds. 2 ounces of liquid nitrogen struck Lyra directly in the face and mouth. Her saliva froze instantly, creating ice crystals that expanded with devastating force. Her tongue, soft palate, and throat tissues became brittle as glass, cracking and shattering as extreme cold penetrated deeper. Lyra's scream died as her vocal cords froze solid. The liquid nitrogen continued down her esophagus, flash freezing everything it touched. When she tried to move her tongue, it shattered like a wine glass, sending bloody fragments across the kitchen floor. The kitchen erupted in chaos. Isabella screamed for someone to call 911 while David stood frozen in horror. Rachel rushed in, her camera forgotten as she watched her girlfriend collapse, blood and ice crystals pouring from her mouth. As Lyra's frozen tissues thawed, massive internal hemorrhaging began. Her esophagus, riddled with perforations from expanding ice, couldn't contain the bleeding. The liquid nitrogen had damaged her trachea, making breathing impossible as her airway filled with blood and debris. Emergency responders arrived at 9:52 p.m., but faced an impossible situation. The extensive tissue damage prevented establishing an airway, and internal bleeding was too severe to control. Despite their efforts, Lyra was pronounced dead at 10:31 p.m. from hypothermic shock and massive hemorrhaging. The aftermath was swift. Molecule Restaurant closed permanently within 48 hours. David Kim faced criminal charges for negligent homicide and was banned from professional kitchens nationwide. Isabella Santos abandoned the culinary world entirely. The incident sparked nationwide regulations governing liquid nitrogen use in restaurants, requiring specialized training and safety protocols. In death, Lyra achieved what had eluded her in life. She became the story rather than its critic, her final review written in blood and ice across a kitchen floor, a permanent reminder that some pursuits of perfection exact the ultimate price. It was July 8, 2009 in Camden, New Jersey. Vincent Smith II, a 29-year-old temporary worker, arrived for his shift at Cocoa Services Incorporated, a chocolate processing facility. The young man had only been working at the plant for a few weeks, having recently moved back to Camden to find work. On this ordinary Wednesday morning, no one could have predicted the horrific accident that would claim his life. The facility on the 700 block of North 36th Street was a processing plant where raw chocolate was melted down and mixed before being shipped to major manufacturers like Hershey's. Vincent's job that day was straightforward but dangerous. He stood on a 9-foot-high platform above an 8-foot-deep vat of melting chocolate, loading large chunks of raw chocolate into the tank. The chocolate in the vat was heated to approximately 120 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt the solid chunks, but not so hot as to burn or scorch the delicate cocoa. As Vincent worked, a large mechanical paddle continuously stirred the mixture below him, ensuring the chocolate melted evenly. This industrial mixer, designed to handle massive quantities of chocolate, rotated with significant force. Around 10:30 a.m., something went terribly wrong. Vincent, standing precariously on the platform with no safety harness, lost his footing while dumping chunks of chocolate over the side of the vat. In an instant, he slipped and plunged headfirst into the hot, liquid chocolate below. The fall alone was dangerous, but what made this accident particularly deadly was the mixing paddle. As Vincent fell into the vat, He was struck in the head by the large agitator, a fatal blow that likely rendered him unconscious immediately. His co-workers watched in horror as the scene unfolded. "I tried as hard as I could," a distraught co-worker later told reporters, visibly shaken by the accident. 3 of Vincent's colleagues acted quickly, rushing to shut off the mixing machine. But the damage had already been done. They couldn't reach Vincent in the deep vat of thick, viscous chocolate. Emergency services were called immediately. When firefighters arrived at the scene, they faced the grim task of extracting Vincent from the chocolate vat. By the time they managed to pull him out, he had been submerged in the hot liquid for approximately 10 minutes. Many of the rescue workers emerged covered in chocolate, a macabre reminder of the unusual nature of this industrial accident. Despite their efforts, Vincent was pronounced dead at the scene. The Camden County Prosecutor's Office spokesman, Jason Laughlin, confirmed that the cause of death was the blow to the head from the mixing paddle, combined with the fall and submersion in the hot chocolate. Vincent's father and aunt rushed to the facility, only to receive the devastating news that he hadn't survived. "They say he didn't make it," his teary-eyed Aunt Teresa Smith told reporters at the scene. The family stood at the facility's gate that afternoon, waiting to speak with management, seeking answers about how this could have happened. "That's all it would have taken was just some sort of a safety harness to prevent him from falling in," Teresa Smith said, questioning whether proper safety measures had been in place. Following the accident, investigations revealed troubling facts about the facility. Camden officials cited Lyons and Sons Inc., which owned the building and rented space to Cocoa Services, for operating without a business license. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, launched an investigation into potential safety violations. In January 2010, OSHA fined the companies nearly $40,000 for 12 serious safety violations. The investigation found that the facility had no first aid program in place and lacked proper safety precautions that could have prevented Vincent's death. The citations included missing guardrails, inadequate emergency procedures, and improper safety training. Vincent Smith II left behind his parents, Vincent James Smith Sr. and Deborah Hoffman, his sister Alicia, 3 brothers, and 2 nephews. His funeral was held at Community Baptist Church in Camden, with interment at Sunset Memorial Park in Pennsauken, New Jersey. His tragic death serves as a stark reminder of the importance of workplace safety regulations and the devastating consequences when they're not properly implemented. It was May 14, 2017, a warm spring evening in Manhattan. The sidewalks near the subway entrances were crowded with office workers heading home, tourists with shopping bags, and students leaving campus. Food carts lined the street corners, while small delis stayed busy serving people in a rush. Among them was 25-year-old Rachel Stein, a law student on her way back to Brooklyn after a day of classes. Before boarding the subway, she stopped at a deli near the station. She ordered a simple sandwich, something she had done many times before. Rachel had a known sesame allergy and was careful about what she ate. She usually checked with staff or read labels closely, but that evening the roll she was given was mislabeled. It had been baked with sesame flour mixed into the dough, something not visible on the surface. She carried the sandwich down into the subway and boarded a downtown train. The car was crowded, and she sat near the door while unwrapping her food. She took several bites before realizing something was wrong. Her lips started to itch, and swelling appeared around her mouth. Passengers nearby later recalled her rubbing her skin and looking short of breath. Rachel quickly reached into her bag and pulled out her epinephrine injector. For a moment, she hesitated, hoping the symptoms might ease, but the swelling continued. A nurse on the same train urged her to use it right away. She injected the dose into her thigh, and for a short time her breathing seemed to improve. The relief was only temporary. Severe allergic reactions can return even after epinephrine, and many patients require a second dose. Rachel carried only 1 injector. Within minutes, her voice grew hoarse and her breathing became strained again. She slumped forward, and fellow passengers rushed to help. One pulled the emergency intercom, alerting the conductor. The train was held at the next station, where transit staff had already called for paramedics. By the time the doors opened, Rachel had collapsed onto the floor of the subway train. The nurse kept her airway clear while passengers tried to comfort her. Paramedics arrived quickly, placed her on a stretcher, and gave her a second dose of epinephrine along with oxygen. They carried her out of the station and into a waiting ambulance. Inside the ambulance, Rachel's condition worsened. Paramedics worked to keep her breathing with a bag and mask, though swelling in her airway made it difficult. They began IV fluids and got advanced gear ready. Before they reached the hospital doors, she went into cardiac arrest. At the emergency department, doctors immediately began resuscitation efforts. A breathing tube was placed, chest compressions were started, and additional medications were given. Despite continued attempts, her airway swelling and oxygen loss had caused severe damage. After multiple rounds of treatment, she was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Her funeral took place in Brooklyn later that week. Family, friends, and classmates gathered to remember her. Photos of her graduation plans and law school life were displayed as relatives recited prayers. Investigators confirmed that the bread had been mislabeled at the bakery before being sold to the deli. At the time, sesame was not part of the list of allergens required by U.S. labeling laws. The case became one of several examples later raised in public debates about food safety. In 2023, sesame was officially added to the list of major allergens that must be clearly labeled on all packaged foods. For those who had been on the subway that evening, the event remained a stark reminder of how quickly a simple meal could turn into a medical emergency. It was March 30th, 2017, at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. The campus was buzzing with excitement as Greek Week celebrations were in full swing. Among the participants was 20-year-old Caitlin Nelson, a junior social work major known for her warm smile and dedication to helping others. The vibrant college student had signed up for a charity pancake eating contest to benefit Prevent Child Abuse America, unaware that this act of goodwill would lead to her tragic death. Caitlin's life had already been touched by tragedy. Her father, James Nelson, was a Port Authority police officer who died a hero during the September 11th attacks in 2001. He was last seen helping evacuate people from the 27th floor of one of the Twin Towers when it collapsed. Caitlin was just 5 years old when she lost her father. Perhaps inspired by his sacrifice, she dedicated herself to helping others, volunteering at the Resiliency Center of Newtown, where she counseled children affected by the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. As the pancake eating contest began that Thursday evening, the atmosphere was lighthearted. Students cheered as participants, including Caitlin, began rapidly consuming pancakes. When the buzzer rang, Caitlin did what many amateur competitive eaters do. She stuffed several pancakes into her mouth much faster than she could properly chew and swallow them. Within moments, something went terribly wrong. Caitlin began to shake uncontrollably. Her face turned blue as she struggled to breathe. She collapsed to the floor as panic spread through the crowd. 2 nursing students immediately rushed to her aid, attempting life-saving measures. Campus police officers arrived within minutes and found Caitlin unresponsive and not breathing. She started to choke on a pancake and someone recognized it. One of the nursing students at the competition, and she caught her attention, explained Fairfield Police Lieutenant Robert Calamaris. Police officers who were there immediately began CPR, basic life support. Despite their efforts, they couldn't dislodge what officers later described as a mass of pancake paste, like concrete, from her airway. Paramedics transported Caitlin to St. Vincent's Medical Center in Bridgeport, where doctors worked desperately to save her life. She was later transferred to New York Presbyterian Hospital in Manhattan for more specialized care. For 3 days, Caitlin clung to life as medical professionals did everything possible to save her. Doctors determined that her brain had been severely damaged from oxygen deprivation during those critical minutes when she couldn't breathe. On April 2, 2017, Caitlin Nelson was pronounced dead. The autopsy confirmed what emergency responders had suspected. Caitlin had choked on the pancakes, which formed a dense, sticky mass that completely blocked her airway. The medical examiner ruled her death as an accident due to asphyxia, due to obstruction of airway by bolus of food. In the days following her death, thousands of Sacred Heart University students gathered for a candlelight vigil to honor Caitlin's memory. The university flag was lowered to half-staff. "The SHU community is mourning today," the school said in a statement. "We ask that during this time you give Caitlin's family and the members of the SHU community privacy while they grieve. In a final act of generosity that reflected how she lived her life, Caitlin's organs were donated to help others. That's exactly what Caitlin would have wanted. That's just the type of selfless person she was, said close friend Stephanie Xinque. She was a beautiful human being. In 2018, Caitlin's mother, Roseanne Nelson, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Sacred Heart University, claiming the school had approved the contest despite the dangers of pancakes and failed to have adequate medical personnel present. The university initially responded by claiming Caitlin was responsible for her own death due to her carelessness and negligence, but later settled the lawsuit in 2020 for an undisclosed amount. Caitlin's tragic story serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly a fun, charitable event can turn deadly, and how even something as seemingly harmless as pancakes can become lethal under the wrong circumstances. It was July 20th, 2022, in Mumbai, India. The bustling city was in the midst of its monsoon season, and in the modest neighborhood of Pascal Wadi in Malad West, 35-year-old Rekha Nishad was dealing with a common household problem: rats. The persistent rodents had become more than a nuisance in her small home, which she shared with her husband and brother-in-law. Rekha, who worked odd jobs to help support her family, was resourceful and determined. After conventional methods failed to solve their rat problem, she devised what seemed like a practical solution. She carefully injected rat poison into several ripe tomatoes, planning to place them strategically around the house where the rodents frequented. It was a common enough tactic in neighborhoods where professional pest control was an unaffordable luxury. That evening, after a long day of work, Rekha returned home exhausted, but looking forward to a simple comfort: a hot bowl of Maggi noodles, a popular instant meal in India. As she began preparing her dinner, she turned on the television, grateful for the distraction after a tiring day. The flickering screen captured her attention as she mechanically went through the familiar motions of cooking. Water boiled on the stove as Rekha reached for ingredients to enhance her simple meal. The kitchen was dimly lit, and her focus was divided between the cooking pot and the television program that had drawn her in. In this moment of distraction, she made a fatal error. She grabbed one of the poisoned tomatoes she had prepared earlier for the rats. Without realizing what she had done, Rekha chopped the tomato and added it to her noodles. The poison, colorless and odorless when mixed with the tomato's flesh, gave no warning of its presence. The spices and flavors of the instant noodles further masked any unusual taste. Rekha stirred the pot, unaware that she had just prepared her last meal. She settled on the couch with her bowl of noodles, enjoying the simple pleasure of dinner while watching TV. The poison worked silently as she ate, entering her system with each bite. By the time she finished her meal, the deadly substance was already beginning its work. Within hours, Rekha began experiencing severe symptoms. What started as nausea quickly escalated to intense vomiting and abdominal pain. Her husband and brother-in-law, alarmed by her rapidly deteriorating condition, realized something was terribly wrong. As her symptoms worsened, they rushed her to Shatabdi Hospital, fear evident in their eyes as Rekha struggled to remain conscious. At the hospital, doctors worked frantically to determine the cause of her sudden illness. It was Rekha herself who provided the crucial information, explaining between bouts of pain that she had accidentally used a poisoned tomato in her cooking. This revelation allowed the medical team to identify the poison and attempt appropriate treatment. Despite their efforts, the poison had already caused extensive damage to Rekha's system. For 2 days, she fought for her life as the medical staff did everything they could to counteract the effects of the rat poison. Her family maintained a constant vigil by her bedside, hoping for a miracle. On July 22nd, just 2 days after her fatal meal, Rekha Nishad passed away. The poison, designed to kill small rodents, had proven equally lethal to a human when consumed in a single concentrated dose. Police from the Malvani station investigated the incident, recording Rekha's statement before her death and examining the remaining poisoned tomatoes in her home. They concluded there was no foul play involved, just a tragic accident born of a moment's distraction. Rekha's death sent ripples through her community, a stark reminder of how quickly life can change. What made her story particularly heartbreaking was the ordinariness of the circumstances: a working woman preparing a simple meal, momentarily distracted by television, making a single mistake that would cost her everything. It was January 1st, 2015 in Tokyo, and the city was alive with New Year holiday celebrations. Families across the city gathered to eat traditional dishes that are part of the annual custom. Among these dishes is mochi, a sticky rice cake that is eaten during this season. It is soft but heavy and becomes glue-like when chewed, making it one of the most common holiday foods linked to choking incidents. Hiroshi Watanabe, a 72-year-old retired teacher, sat at his dining table with his wife and daughter. The family meal had been carefully prepared for the occasion. Platters of vegetables, fish, and mochi were placed on the table. Hiroshi had eaten mochi countless times in his life, and despite wearing dentures, he still enjoyed the challenge of chewing it in its full form. His wife reminded him to cut it into smaller pieces, but Hiroshi, like many older men of his generation, felt it was fine to eat it whole. The atmosphere was light and relaxed as they talked about the new year. Hiroshi picked up a piece of mochi and began to chew. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then, within moments, he coughed sharply and pressed his hand against his throat. His family quickly realized something was wrong. His face started to turn pale, and he was no longer able to speak clearly. His daughter rushed behind him and tried the Heimlich maneuver, a technique she had only seen demonstrated but never performed. She placed her arms around his stomach and pressed upward, but the food did not dislodge. His wife grabbed a towel, trying to clear his mouth, but the mochi had already stuck deep in the back of his throat. Witnesses later said that the sticky rice had sealed against the soft palate, creating a block that was nearly impossible to remove without equipment. The family called emergency services. Within minutes, paramedics arrived and carried their gear into the house. They immediately tried suction equipment, sliding a tube down to remove the mochi, but the rice cake clung stubbornly. One paramedic applied chest compressions while another prepared additional tools. The room filled with urgency as the rescuers worked, but the blockage was still in place. Hiroshi's body weakened during the attempts. His arms slumped at his sides and he eventually went limp in the chair. Medics carried him quickly to the ambulance and rushed him to the nearest hospital. For several more minutes, doctors continued trying to clear the airway and restore his breathing, but the rice cake had caused too much damage and lack of oxygen. Hiroshi was declared dead shortly after arrival. The news of his death spread only within his community. Hiroshi had been a respected teacher for decades, known by many of his former students. At his funeral in Tokyo, relatives, neighbors, and some of his old pupils came to pay their respects. The ceremony was quiet, held following tradition, and his passing was marked by those who remembered his years of service in education. Authorities later included his case in their yearly public reminders about the dangers of mochi during the New Year period. Every January, Japanese media outlets report on choking incidents linked to the rice cakes, most involving elderly men. Warnings are given to cut mochi into smaller pieces, chew carefully, and supervise older family members while eating. Paramedics also emphasize that, even with quick response, mochi can be extremely difficult to remove once lodged in the throat. Hiroshi's death was one among several similar cases that year, reinforcing the risks of a food so deeply tied to tradition. For families across Japan, it served as another reminder that even familiar meals can become unexpectedly dangerous when caution is not taken. It was a quiet morning on August 16, 2010, in Nebworth, Hertfordshire. Mitchell Carey, a 43-year-old graphic designer and father of two, decided to skip breakfast that day. By lunchtime, hunger drove him to a local cafe near his workplace to grab a quick meal. He chose a simple corned beef sandwich, unaware that this ordinary lunch choice would lead to a tragic and extremely rare medical crisis. Mitchell, who worked for sound engineering companies Sonic Distribution Ltd. and SE Electronics International as a marketing and communications director, returned to his office and ate his sandwich. Just 25 minutes later, his colleagues noticed something was terribly wrong. Mitchell began sweating profusely, his face flushed with pain. The discomfort was so intense that he stripped off his clothes, telling his coworkers that his pain level was 10 out of 10. Alarmed by his condition, his colleagues called for emergency services. Paramedics arrived quickly and rushed Mitchell to Lister Hospital in Stevenage. Doctors initially diagnosed him with food poisoning, a common enough condition. After treating him with painkillers for stomach cramps and diarrhea, they discharged him the same day, instructing him to rest at home. He never had any breakfast, and the first thing he had that morning was a corned beef sandwich for lunch. His wife, Debbie Carey, a hairdresser, later told investigators. She described how he collapsed at work sweating profusely, before stripping his clothes off due to the unbearable pain. Unfortunately, Mitchell's condition worsened dramatically overnight. By the following afternoon, he was experiencing severe vomiting and excruciating stomach cramps. He collapsed at his home in Nebworth, and Debbie immediately called for an ambulance. When paramedics arrived, they found Mitchell in critical condition. At Lister Hospital, doctors discovered Mitchell was suffering from multiple organ failure. Despite their desperate efforts to save him, including resuscitation after he suffered a heart attack in the emergency room, Mitchell's condition continued to deteriorate rapidly. By the early hours of August 18th, just 2 days after eating the sandwich, Mitchell Carey was pronounced dead. The autopsy revealed a shocking cause: Clostridium perfringens, type A, an extremely rare and deadly bacterium. Dr. Martin Carter, a physician at Lister Hospital, testified that this particular strain of bacteria would have entered Mitchell's body and bloodstream less than 48 hours before his death. "I would be very suspicious of the corned beef," Dr. Carter stated. "The bacteria is carried in corned beef. This is such a rare condition, there are just a handful throughout the world. I have read of just 7. What made this case particularly devastating was the bacteria's nearly 100% mortality rate once it enters the bloodstream. Mortality reports for Clostridium perfringens, type A septicemia, is virtually 100%, Dr. Carter explained during the inquest. Environmental health officers tested the corned beef at the cafe 10 days later, but the results were negative. Despite this, the timeline of Mitchell's symptoms strongly suggested the sandwich was the source of the deadly bacteria. Coroner Edward Thomas returned a narrative verdict, ruling that Mitchell died from multiple organ failure caused by intravascular coagulation and enterocolitis, triggered by Clostridium perfringens type A. The coroner noted the extreme rarity of the case, saying, "We cannot be sure it was the corned beef, but he was unwell 25 minutes after eating it. It's an extremely rare organism." Mitchell's death was not the first tragedy to strike his family. He was the widower of Anna Wilson, daughter of former Arsenal goalkeeper and TV presenter Bob Wilson. Anna had died of a rare cancer in 1998 at just 31 years old. Mitchell had remained close to the Wilson family, who said after his death, "We loved him dearly." Mitchell left behind his second wife, Debbie, whom he married in 2004, and 2 young sons, Dylan, 9, and Ewan, 7. His sudden and bizarre death from something as ordinary as a corned beef sandwich serves as a chilling reminder of how even the most common foods can sometimes harbor deadly dangers. It was December 23, 2024, in Torres, a coastal city in southern Brazil. The holiday season was in full swing as the Silva dos Anjos family gathered to celebrate Christmas together. Maida Berenice Flores da Silva, 58, her sister Neuza Denise Silva dos Anjos, 65, and Neuza's daughter Tatiana Denise Silva dos Anjos, 43, were among the 7 family members present for what should have been a joyous occasion. None of them could have imagined that a traditional Christmas cake would turn this celebration into a tragedy. The family had assembled at the home of Zeli Terezinha Silva dos Anjos, 61, who had prepared a bolo de Natal, a traditional Brazilian Christmas cake, with the help of her sister Maida. This was a family tradition they had maintained for years, a centerpiece of their holiday gatherings that everyone looked forward to. It was a traditional family cake, a king cake, which they always made, a local resident later told Brazilian media. The cake looked appetizing, giving no indication of the danger it contained. As the family sat down to enjoy coffee and cake that afternoon, 6 of the 7 family members present took slices of the festive treat. Almost immediately, something seemed off. Some family members later recalled an unpleasant and spicy hint to the cake, a subtle warning that went unheeded. Within minutes of consumption, the family members began to feel severely ill. Zeli, who had eaten 2 pieces of the cake, was the first to show symptoms and was rushed to the hospital. The others quickly followed as their conditions deteriorated rapidly. The scene turned chaotic as family members experienced intense stomach pain, vomiting, and weakness. Tatiana and Maida's conditions worsened dramatically. Both women suffered cardiac arrests and died that same day. Their Christmas celebration transformed into an unimaginable nightmare. Neuza, Tatiana's mother, was hospitalized in critical condition. Despite doctors' desperate efforts to save her, she passed away the following day, Christmas Eve, from what hospital officials described as shock after food poisoning. 3 other family members, including a 10-year-old boy, remained hospitalized but survived the ordeal. As news of the deaths spread, police launched an investigation led by Chief Marcos Vinicius Veloso. Initial suspicions pointed to food poisoning, but the severity and rapid onset of symptoms suggested something far more sinister. Blood tests soon revealed the shocking truth. The cake contained lethal amounts of arsenic, a highly toxic substance. Forensic analysis found staggering levels of the poison in the victims' bodies. Margette Mittman, forensic police director of Rio Grande do Sul state, reported that one victim had 350 times the lethal amount of arsenic in her system. An intentional poisoning rather than accidental contamination. The investigation took a dramatic turn when police discovered that Zéli's husband, Paulo Luiz, had died just months earlier in September from what was initially reported as food poisoning. His death, previously considered natural, was now being re-examined as potentially connected to the Christmas cake poisoning. On January 5, 2025, police arrested a woman identified in local media as Daisy, reportedly the daughter-in-law of Zéli. Investigators discovered she had researched arsenic on the internet before the incident. She was charged with triple homicide and triple attempted homicide. As soon as the 10-year-old boy ate it and also complained about the taste, Zéli kind of put her hand on top of the cake and said, "And now no one will eat it anymore." And people started to feel sick at that moment, Officer Veloso told reporters, describing the scene based on witness accounts. The tragedy shocked the small community of Torres. What made the case particularly disturbing was the deliberate nature of the poisoning, targeting a family gathering during what should have been a time of celebration and togetherness. The deaths of Maida, Nusa, and Tatiana serve as a chilling reminder of how something as innocent as a family tradition, a Christmas cake shared among loved ones, can become deadly when tainted by malice. It was September 19, 2008, in Edlington, South Yorkshire, England. Andrew Lee, a 33-year-old forklift truck driver with dreams of becoming a chef, was about to face an unexpected end to his culinary adventures. Andrew had always been passionate about cooking, especially dishes with bold, spicy flavors. Having recently passed a full medical exam, he was the picture of health, strong, vibrant, and full of life. No one could have predicted that his love for spicy food would lead to such a tragic outcome. On this fateful day, Andrew's father presented him with a harvest of homegrown red chili peppers. The peppers were vibrant, glossy, and promised intense heat, perfect for Andrew's adventurous palate. What should have been just another ingredient in his cooking arsenal became the centerpiece of a deadly challenge. Andrew decided to transform these chilies into a competition. He invited his girlfriend Samantha Bailey's brother Michael over, proposing a contest to see who could create and consume the hottest sauce possible. The competition wasn't spontaneous but had been planned for days. Andrew's father had specifically cultivated these chilies for this purpose, growing varieties known for their blistering heat. In the kitchen, Andrew worked with focused intensity, chopping the chilies and creating a sauce that would push the boundaries of heat tolerance. After preparing the fiery concoction, Andrew tested it with a quick finger dip. His immediate reaction, rushing to wash his hands while commenting on the extraordinary heat, should have been the first warning sign. The atmosphere remained lighthearted as Andrew mixed the sauce with a plate of pasta. Michael watched as Andrew consumed the entire plate. Despite the obvious burning sensation that flushed his face and caused beads of sweat to form on his forehead, Andrew finished every bite, determined to prove his heat tolerance. This wasn't even Andrew's first meal of the evening. He had already enjoyed a dinner of lamb chops and mashed potatoes after work. The chili challenge was purely for sport, a friendly competition that would have unforeseen consequences. As the evening progressed, Andrew's body began to react to the extreme capsaicin levels. What started as the familiar burn of spicy food transformed into something more concerning, an intense, unbearable itching spread across his entire body, becoming increasingly severe as the night wore on. Samantha tried to ease his suffering by scratching his back as he attempted to sleep. The itching seemed to subside enough for Andrew to finally drift off around 2:30 a.m. Neither of them realized these were his final hours. When morning came, Samantha awoke to find Andrew unresponsive beside her. Despite the frantic emergency call and the rapid arrival of paramedics, nothing could be done. Andrew Lee was pronounced dead at the scene. The investigation investigation into his sudden death pointed to the extreme heat from the homemade chili sauce as the likely trigger for a severe physiological reaction. The capsaicin in chili peppers, while generally safe in normal quantities, can in rare cases cause extreme responses in the body. The post-mortem examination revealed no pre-existing heart condition or other health issues that might explain his sudden death, making the connection to the chili sauce even more compelling. Andrew's story stands as a sobering reminder that even seemingly harmless food challenges can have devastating consequences. What began as a lighthearted competition between friends ended in an unimaginable tragedy, leaving a family to mourn a vibrant life cut short by something as seemingly innocent as a homemade chili sauce that proved, literally, too hot to handle. It was July 4th, 2018, when the annual Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest at Coney Island witnessed its most tragic moment in competitive eating history. Reese Montgomery, a 29-year-old professional competitive eater from Phoenix, had dedicated 6 years to the sport that would claim his life. Standing 6 feet 2 inches and weighing 280 pounds, Reese possessed the build that made him formidable in competitions. His aggressive, theatrical style earned him 8th place globally and a devoted following who appreciated his showmanship. Working part-time as a warehouse supervisor, Reese had spent months preparing for this contest. His personal record of 58 hot dogs in 10 minutes was impressive, but he dreamed of shattering the world record of 76 hot dogs held by defending champion Joey Martinez. Reese hired a specialized coach and perfected his dangerous whole-swallowing method. His girlfriend, Amanda Foster, a 26-year-old emergency room nurse, reluctantly supported his career despite knowing the medical risks. She attended every competition with a medical kit, her nursing instincts constantly alert. The Coney Island atmosphere was electric that Independence Day morning. Thousands packed the venue as competitors took positions at the long table. At 12 p.m., Judge Robert Johnson raised the starting flag. Reese launched into his signature style, separating hot dogs from buns, dunking bread in warm water, then swallowing entire hot dogs whole while cramming soggy buns into his mouth. Reese took an early lead, consuming like a machine. By 3 minutes, he had devoured 28 hot dogs, putting him on a record-breaking pace. Sweat poured down his face as he maintained a relentless rhythm. Joey Martinez watched nervously as his record appeared threatened. The defending champion's usual calm showed cracks as Reese continued his unprecedented pace. At 4 minutes and 15 seconds, Reese made a fatal decision. Determined to maintain speed, he grabbed 3 full hot dogs and attempted to swallow them simultaneously. The mass lodged in his esophagus, creating a complete blockage 6 inches above his stomach. Reese's face flushed red as he realized something was wrong. He couldn't breathe, swallow, or dislodge the obstruction. Standing abruptly, he clutched his throat, making desperate choking gestures while his face turned purple from oxygen deprivation. The crowd initially cheered louder, assuming his gestures were showmanship. Only Amanda recognized genuine distress and rushed on stage, attempting the Heimlich maneuver with all her strength. However, the blockage was too large and firmly wedged. Reese collapsed onto the table, scattering hot dogs as his body convulsed violently. Judge Johnson called emergency assistance while competitors stopped eating, watching in horror. Paramedics arrived within 4 minutes but couldn't remove the obstruction using standard procedures. An emergency tracheotomy was attempted, but Reese had suffered irreversible brain damage from oxygen deprivation. At 12:47 p.m., just 47 minutes after the contest began, Reese Montgomery was pronounced dead from asphyxiation due to esophageal obstruction. The competitive eating world had lost one of its most promising athletes publicly and tragically. The aftermath was swift. Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest was permanently canceled, ending decades of tradition. Amanda Foster successfully sued organizers for inadequate safety protocols. Joey Martinez, traumatized by witnessing his rival's death, immediately retired from competitive eating. New international regulations were implemented requiring medical personnel at all sanctioned competitions. Reese Montgomery's death served as a sobering reminder that competitive eating carried genuine life-threatening risks, demanding serious safety considerations and medical oversight. It was October 2015 in Barry, South Wales. Darren Bray, a 29-year-old father of 3, was enjoying a night out with friends. Known for his playful personality and love of making others laugh, Darren was always the life of the party. On this particular evening, what started as innocent fun would lead to an unimaginable tragedy. The night had been filled with laughter, drinks, and camaraderie. As the evening progressed, Darren and his friends decided they were hungry. His friend Sam Bisgrove volunteered to make a quick run to McDonald's, and Darren requested a simple cheeseburger, a 99-cent item that would become the instrument of his death. When Sam returned with the food, the group gathered at his house to eat. The atmosphere was light as they shared stories and jokes. Darren, always looking for ways to entertain his friends, suddenly had an idea for a stunt. He held up his McDonald's cheeseburger, a gleam of mischief in his eyes. "Watch this," he announced to the room, drawing everyone's attention. With dramatic flair, Darren compressed the burger, squashing it into a tight ball about half its original size. The group watched, some amused, others curious about what he planned to do next. Without hesitation, Darren opened his mouth wide and stuffed the entire burger inside at once. At first, there were laughs and cheers at his audacity, but within seconds, the mood shifted dramatically. Darren's expression changed from playful to panicked as he realized he couldn't swallow the massive ball of food. His face began to turn blue and he made desperate coughing sounds as he struggled to dislodge the burger. Sam, recognizing the seriousness of the situation, rushed to help his friend. He slapped Darren's back repeatedly, trying to dislodge the food blocking his airway. Amy Bennett, Sam's girlfriend who was also present, watched in horror as Darren's condition rapidly deteriorated. "I could see him trying to cough it up and he was making horrible coughing noises," Sam would later recall at the inquest. "I tried to hit his back to help him clear his airway. Despite their frantic efforts, Darren collapsed. Sam immediately called emergency services while continuing to try to help his friend. Paramedics arrived quickly and performed CPR, but the obstruction was too severe. Darren Bray was pronounced dead at the scene. The post-mortem examination revealed the extent of the tragedy. Dr. Rhiannon Trefor, the pathologist who conducted the examination, found a massive ball of food measuring approximately 3.1 inches by 2 inches, 8 centimeters by 5 centimeters, lodged in Darren's throat. The burger had completely blocked his airway, making it impossible for him to breathe. He would not have been able to breathe with that in his airway, Dr. Trefor explained. Death would have followed quite quickly from a choking of this nature. The inquest at Cardiff Coroner's Court heard that while Darren had been drinking that night, his blood alcohol level was about 1.5 times the legal driving limit. It wasn't enough to significantly impair his judgment. Assistant Coroner Christopher Woolley recorded a conclusion of death by misadventure, acknowledging that Darren had not intended to harm himself, but had taken a risk that unfortunately led to his death. Among those most affected by the tragedy was Darren's childhood friend, professional boxer Lee Selby. The two had grown up together in Barry, and Selby was devastated by the loss. When he won the International Boxing Federation Featherweight Championship later that year, he dedicated his victory to Darren's memory. Darren Bray's death serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly a moment of fun can turn fatal. What began as a simple stunt, eating a cheeseburger in one bite, ended in tragedy, leaving 3 children without a father and a community mourning the loss of a man known for his humor and zest for life. His story stands as a cautionary tale about the thin line between harmless pranks and deadly risks. It was April 30th, 2026, when Forrest Greenwood's expertise became his undoing at a trendy farm-to-table restaurant in Portland, Oregon. Forrest, a weathered 44-year-old mycologist standing 5 feet 9 inches tall, had spent 2 decades building his reputation as Portland's premier wild mushroom forager. His sun-lined face and calloused hands told the story of countless hours spent in Oregon's dense forests, identifying edible fungi with scientific precision. Known for his meticulous nature and passionate dedication to mycology, Forrest supplied premium wild mushrooms to the city's most exclusive restaurants. That evening, Forrest arrived at the upscale establishment alongside his colleague, 37-year-old Dr. Sarah Walsh, a fellow mycologist with whom he frequently collaborated on research projects. The restaurant's head chef, 39-year-old Marcus Beaumont, had worked closely with Forrest for 3 years, trusting his expertise implicitly. Marcus, an ambitious culinary artist known for his innovative approach to Pacific Northwest cuisine, had designed a 12-course wild mushroom tasting menu, specifically featuring Forrest's latest forage. The fatal error had occurred days earlier when Forrest's assistant, 28-year-old River Johnson, misidentified a batch of mushrooms while Forrest recovered from a severe flu. River, eager to prove himself capable, had mistakenly included death cap mushrooms among what should have been safe chanterelles. The restaurant lacked any secondary verification system, relying entirely on Forrest's reputation. At 7:30 p.m., Forrest consumed the contaminated seventh course, savoring what he believed were perfectly prepared chanterelles. The deadly amatoxins began their silent assault on his liver and kidneys immediately, though Forrest felt completely normal. He spent the evening discussing mycology with other diners, his enthusiasm infectious as he described the subtle flavors of each variety. The insidious nature of amatoxin poisoning meant Forrest experienced no symptoms for 6 hours. At 1:30 a.m., severe abdominal cramping struck him at home. The toxins had begun systematically destroying his liver cells, causing rapid organ failure. Forrest's body convulsed with violent nausea as he recognized the terrifying symptoms he had only read about in medical journals. Dr. Walsh, staying nearby for a conference, rushed to Forrest's aid when he called in distress. By 3 a.m., bloody diarrhea indicated the toxins were ravaging his intestinal lining. Sarah immediately recognized the classic progression of amatoxin poisoning and called emergency services, though she feared they were already too late. Forrest's skin developed a sickly yellow hue as his liver failed completely. The toxins simultaneously attacked his kidneys, causing them to shut down. His decades of knowledge couldn't save him from the microscopic killers coursing through his bloodstream. By 6 a.m., Forrest had lost consciousness as multiple organ systems failed in a cascade. Paramedics found Forrest in critical condition, his blood pressure dangerously low as his cardiovascular system struggled against the overwhelming toxin load. Despite aggressive medical intervention at the hospital, the amatoxins had progressed beyond any hope of reversal. The same expertise that had made Forrest Portland's most trusted forager had been undermined by a single moment of misplaced trust. Forrest Greenwood was pronounced dead at 2:47 p.m. from amatoxin poisoning and complete liver failure, just 19 hours after consuming the deadly mushrooms he had unknowingly provided. The tragedy sent shockwaves through Portland's culinary community. The farm-to-table restaurant closed permanently within days. River Johnson faced criminal charges for negligent identification, his promising career destroyed by one catastrophic mistake. New regulations mandated dual verification for all wild mushroom identification, while Forrest's family pursued legal action against the restaurant for inadequate safety protocols. The incident sparked nationwide restrictions on wild mushroom service in restaurants, forever changing how the culinary industry approached foraged ingredients. Forrest's death served as a sobering reminder that even the most experienced experts remain vulnerable to nature's deadliest deceptions. It was October 14, 2017, in Manchester, England. The city was lively on a Saturday night, with people filling restaurants, bars, and nightclubs across the busy streets. In the center of town, a newly popular cocktail bar drew a young crowd with flashy drinks and unusual menu items. Among them was a drink prepared with liquid nitrogen, advertised for its smoky, dramatic effect as the vapor rolled across the glass. That night, 23-year-old Emma Davis had gone there to celebrate her birthday with friends. Emma was a university student from Liverpool, studying biology at Manchester University. Classmates had described her as someone who enjoyed group outings and rarely missed a chance to join friends after exams or birthdays. Her small group of classmates reserved a table and ordered several of the bar's signature drinks, including the cocktail that was mixed with liquid nitrogen. The bartender made the special drink right at their table. Witnesses recalled how the glass gave off a heavy white fog as the liquid nitrogen cooled it rapidly. Usually, the nitrogen is supposed to fully evaporate before anyone drinks it, leaving only the alcohol and mixers inside. But on this occasion, the bartender poured the drink and handed it over while vapor was still spilling from the rim. Emma, unaware of the danger, raised it for a quick sip before setting it back down. Almost instantly, something went wrong. Emma dropped the glass, spilling it across the table. She grabbed her stomach tightly and fell against the edge of her chair. Friends at the table panicked and shouted for staff as Emma doubled over, unable to straighten herself. One friend tried to hold her up while others ran toward the bar yelling for help. Bar staff rushed over as Emma slid onto the floor. Witnesses said they heard her groaning while holding her stomach. Her breathing grew shallow, and her face turned pale. Within minutes, her abdomen felt stiff to the touch, a clear sign that something serious had happened inside, likely from the drink she had just taken. Paramedics were called immediately, arriving within 10 minutes. They found Emma unresponsive and in clear distress, and quickly moved her onto a stretcher. Witnesses said they placed an oxygen mask over her face and started checking her vital signs. One paramedic later explained that even swallowing a tiny amount of liquid nitrogen can cause massive damage, as the chemical is stored at nearly 320 degrees Fahrenheit. If ingested, it can instantly perforate the stomach wall and release nitrogen gas inside, expanding with explosive force. By the time Emma was in the ambulance, she had already gone into shock. Medics worked quickly as they rushed her to Manchester Royal Infirmary, but her condition got worse on the way. She went into cardiac arrest just before arrival. Doctors tried to save her, but the internal damage was too severe. Emma Clark was pronounced dead later that night. News of the incident spread quickly through Manchester and across the UK the following day. Local authorities immediately investigated the bar where it happened. Its license was suspended pending a safety review, and inspectors noted that staff had failed to follow guidelines for serving liquid nitrogen in food and drinks. Emma's funeral was held the following week in Liverpool, attended by family members, classmates, and neighbors. Many of her fellow students traveled from Manchester to pay their respects. Photographs of Emma were placed near the front of the service, and several classmates carried flowers to the family's home afterward. In the months that followed, UK authorities reminded restaurants and bars of the strict rules surrounding liquid nitrogen. Officials stressed that it should never be served to customers before fully evaporating, and that staff should be trained in its risks. Several venues across the country voluntarily removed such drinks from their menus. The case became a sobering example of how a novelty meant for entertainment could quickly turn deadly when handled carelessly. It was January 5, 2021, in Colwyn Bay, North Wales. Thomas Anthony Mansfield, a 29-year-old personal trainer and security guard, was at home preparing for his workout. Known for his dedication to fitness, Thomas had recently ordered a packet of caffeine powder from Blackburn Distributions, a UK-based sports supplement company. The father of two was looking for that extra energy boost to enhance his training sessions. That morning, the caffeine powder arrived at his doorstep. Thomas, excited to try his new supplement, went straight to his kitchen to prepare a pre-workout drink. The recommended serving on the packaging stated between 60 to 300 milligrams twice a day, a small amount that would give just the right energy kick without any danger. But there was a problem. Thomas's digital scale had a starting weight of 2 grams, making it impossible to measure the tiny milligram doses recommended on the package. The powder didn't come with a measuring scoop, leaving Thomas to estimate the amount himself. This simple oversight would prove fatal. Unaware of the danger, Thomas was likely aiming for a mid-range serving of the supplement. Instead, he unknowingly measured several grams of the powder, up to 5 grams according to later investigations. This amount was 7 times higher than the maximum recommended dose, equivalent to drinking around 200 cups of coffee at once. Thomas mixed the powder with water, took a sip, and immediately necked the remainder of the drink. Within minutes, his body began to react violently to the massive caffeine overdose. His heart started racing uncontrollably. Thomas clutched his chest in pain, telling his wife Susanna that something was wrong. Moments later, he collapsed onto the sofa. His condition deteriorated rapidly as he began foaming at the mouth. Susanna, panicking, ran outside to get help from neighbors and nearby family members. She quickly called emergency services, desperately hoping they could save her husband. Paramedics arrived within minutes and found Thomas in cardiac arrest with a grossly abnormal heart rhythm. They immediately used a defibrillator and rushed him to Ysbyty Glan Clwyd Hospital. Despite their best efforts, Thomas was pronounced dead at 4 p.m. that same day, just hours after consuming the fatal drink. A post-mortem examination revealed the shocking truth. Thomas had 392 milligrams of caffeine per liter of blood, nearly 5 times the lethal dose. Medical experts testified that caffeine toxicity can be caused by levels as low as 78 milligrams per liter of blood. To put this in perspective, a typical cup of coffee produces only 2 to 4 milligrams of caffeine per liter of blood. What made this case particularly tragic was that Thomas was described by his wife as really healthy and rarely drank more than 2 cups of coffee a day. He had no underlying health conditions that would have made him more susceptible to caffeine's effects. He was simply a fitness enthusiast trying to improve his workout performance. Senior Coroner John Gittins ruled Thomas's death as misadventure. an unintended consequence of his own actions. The tragedy wasn't due to recklessness, but a simple miscalculation with devastating results. The inquest heard that the instructions and warnings on the packet were not in breach of regulations at the time, but they were clearly insufficient to prevent this tragedy. Following Thomas's death, Blackburn Distributions added a measuring scoop and detailed instruction sheet to all their caffeine powder packages. The coroner stated he was massively reassured by these changes, noting that had these simple tools been available to Thomas, he would likely still be alive today. The incident also prompted warnings from the Food Standards Agency about the dangers of concentrated caffeine supplements, emphasizing the importance of precise measurements and proper tools when handling such potent substances. Thomas left behind his heartbroken wife, Susanna, and their 2 young children, Tommy and Millie. Writing on social media after his death, Susanna said she was absolutely heartbroken by the tragedy. "He was my whole life. I'll never get over this. You were my life, Tom," she wrote. "I'm missing you so much and trying so hard for the kids to keep it together. I love you more than I could love anyone. I'll always love you." Friends described him as a dedicated father and fitness enthusiast who ran his personal training business with the motto, "With you, every step of the way." After his death, the community rallied around his family, raising funds to support them through their grief. His story serves as a chilling reminder of how dangerous concentrated supplements can be without proper measuring tools. What was meant to enhance his workout ended his life, showing how even substances considered safe in moderation can become deadly when mishandled. It was February 22, 2015, when Isabella Chen's passion for artisanal cheese led to her final tasting. Isabella, a 42-year-old food critic with an impeccable reputation, stood barely 5 feet 5 inches but commanded respect throughout San Francisco's culinary scene. Her 2 published books on artisanal dairy products had established her as the city's foremost cheese authority. What few knew was that recent chemotherapy treatments had left her immune system dangerously compromised, a secret she guarded fiercely to protect her career. That afternoon, Isabella entered Fromage Boutique with her dedicated assistant, David Kim, a meticulous 31-year-old who documented every detail of her tastings. They were there to sample the cave-aged Roquefort Supreme, an 18-month aged delicacy that would feature in Isabella's upcoming cooking show appearance. François Dubois, the 58-year-old shop owner, proudly presented the cheese he had personally imported from a small French producer. The wheel displayed an unusual blue-green mold pattern that caught Isabella's trained eye. Margaret Thompson, the boutique's 45-year-old cheese expert, assured them the distinctive coloring was characteristic of extended cave aging in limestone caverns. At precisely 3:45 p.m., Isabella sampled a generous 2-ounce portion, her refined palate detecting what she described as a uniquely earthy flavor profile. David scribbled notes as she analyzed the texture and complexity. Within 15 minutes, Isabella's expression shifted from professional concentration to visible discomfort. Severe abdominal cramping doubled her over as waves of nausea overwhelmed her petite frame. The toxic mold spores, later discovered to originate from industrial runoff contaminating the aging caves, began their devastating assault on her already weakened immune system. Her face flushed crimson as her body temperature spiked to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The mycotoxins coursed through her bloodstream, triggering a cascade of organ failure that her compromised system couldn't combat. At 4:07 p.m., Isabella collapsed, blood streaming from her mouth as the toxins ravaged her stomach lining. David frantically dialed 911 while Francois and Margaret attempted to help, but Isabella's condition deteriorated with terrifying speed. Her breathing became labored as the poison attacked her respiratory system. Her kidneys, overwhelmed by the toxic load, began shutting down alongside her liver. By 4:15 p.m., Isabella had lost consciousness, her body succumbing to septic shock as her blood pressure plummeted. Her heart rhythm became erratic under the mycotoxins' assault. Emergency responders arrived at 4:23 p.m. to find her in complete multi-organ failure. Despite aggressive medical intervention, the poisoning had progressed beyond reversal. At 6:31 p.m., Isabella Chen was pronounced dead, her pursuit of culinary excellence having led to her tragic end. The aftermath was swift and severe. Fromage Boutique closed immediately, and all imported cheeses were quarantined for testing. The French producer faced lawsuits for safety violations, while new FDA regulations mandated mycotoxin testing for imported aged cheeses. David, traumatized by witnessing Isabella's death, abandoned food journalism entirely, unable to separate his memories of that February afternoon from his former passion. Isabella's legacy lived on through enhanced food safety protocols, ensuring no other connoisseur would pay such a devastating price for their dedication to artisanal excellence. It was July 16, 2016, at a county fairground in Austin, Texas. The summer heat pressed down hard on the open field, where hundreds of visitors wandered between food stalls, carnival rides, and livestock pens. In one corner of the fair, a small stage had been set up for contests and performances. That afternoon, the highlight was a chili pepper eating contest. The announcer's voice carried over the speakers, inviting challengers to come forward and test their strength against some of the hottest peppers in the world. Among the volunteers was 28-year-old Mark Rivera, a local construction worker. Mark was known in his circle of friends and co-workers for being competitive and bold, always the one to step up when others hesitated. His crew from a nearby construction site had come to the fair together, and when they saw the contest, they teased him into signing up. He's taken his seat at the long table with several other contestants. Plates of peppers were lined up in front of them, each round increasing in heat. The rules were clear. Each contestant must eat the pepper, swallow it fully, and move on to the next round. The early stages began with jalapenos, then moved up to habaneros. The crowd cheered loudly, many holding up their phones to record. Mark handled the first round easily, though he waved his hands and grabbed water after the habaneros. By the third round, the peppers were much hotter, ghost peppers, than Carolina Reapers, which are known to be among the hottest in the world. Witnesses later said Mark's face grew red, and sweat poured down his forehead. He coughed repeatedly, but forced himself to continue, encouraged by his friends shouting his name. At one point, he tried to swallow a big piece but started coughing hard at the same time. In that moment, bits of the pepper and juice went down the wrong way into his airway. Spectators in the front rows noticed right away when Mark dropped the pepper and hunched forward, clutching at his throat. A harsh choking sound came out, followed by quick, strained gasps. His chair rocked as he tried to rise but fell back. The other contestants stood frozen, unsure what to do, while the announcer urgently called for help. Contest staff rushed over and tried back blows, but the pieces of pepper stuck fast, and he was still choking. At first, there were brief, shallow breaths, but within the next minute, his throat began to swell from the irritation, making it harder and harder for air to move, and he slumped sideways onto the stage. Screams erupted from the audience as someone ran toward the first aid tent. Paramedics arrived within moments and went straight to work. Witnesses recalled them tilting his head back, attempting back blows and abdominal thrusts before switching to suction tools and advanced airway equipment. They managed to clear some fragments, but swelling in his throat was already worsening, cutting off the airway almost completely. CPR was started on stage as the crowd was pushed back. After several minutes, he was lifted onto a stretcher and rushed by ambulance to a nearby hospital. Despite continuous resuscitation attempts, doctors could not reverse the airway damage. Within an hour of his collapse, Mark Rivera was pronounced dead. News of the incident spread quickly around the fairgrounds. The contest was immediately canceled, and the area was closed off to visitors. Fair officials released a brief statement expressing shock and promising cooperation with investigators. A week later, Mark's funeral was held in Austin, attended by family, friends, and many of his co-workers from the construction site. His parents spoke briefly, while relatives carried framed photographs of him during the service. Local authorities reviewed the circumstances and noted that while pepper-eating contests were legal, they often lacked proper safety oversight. Following the incident, officials recommended that such events require having medical staff and emergency gear on standby at all times. Several fairs across Texas quietly removed similar contests from their schedules in the following year. It was March 18, 2016, when ambitious food blogger Cora Bellwether made her final reservation at Takeshi's Authentic Sushi in Tokyo's bustling Shibuya district. At 31, Cora had built a modest following of 1,500 devoted readers who craved her fearless culinary adventures. The petite brunette from Portland possessed an insatiable appetite for extreme dining experiences, often traveling thousands of miles to sample the world's most dangerous delicacies. Her bubbly personality and infectious enthusiasm had earned her invitations to underground supper clubs and exclusive tasting events across 3 continents. Behind the sushi counter stood Master Chef Hiroshi Yamamoto, a 67-year-old legend whose weathered hands had prepared fugu for 45 years. The silver-haired craftsman held Japan's highest fugu certification and had trained over 200 chefs in the deadly art of pufferfish preparation. Despite his trembling fingers, a recent development he attributed to age, Yamamoto's reputation remained untarnished. That evening, Cora specifically requested the most dangerous fugu experience for her blog. Unknown to both chef and diner, the restaurant's supplier had delivered fish caught during an unusual algae bloom, concentrating lethal tetrodotoxin levels far beyond normal parameters. At 8:30 p.m., Yamamoto began his meticulous preparation ritual. While removing the liver, the most toxic organ, his slightly unsteady hands caused his knife to nick the deadly tissue. Concentrated poison seeped onto his cutting board and blade, contaminating every surface. Unaware of the breach, he continued working with the tainted tools. Cora received the first portion at 8:45 p.m. She savored the initial piece, delighting in the characteristic tingling sensation on her tongue. Within minutes, the numbness spread to her lips and cheeks as tetrodotoxin invaded her nervous system. Initially laughing about the authentic experience, her speech became increasingly slurred. By 9 p.m., paralysis crept through her limbs. Cora's arms fell limp at her sides, her legs refusing to respond. The toxin systematically shut down her peripheral nervous system while leaving her consciousness intact, a cruel characteristic of tetrodotoxin poisoning. She remained fully aware but completely helpless, unable to speak or signal her distress. Her breathing grew labored as the poison reached her diaphragm muscles. At 9:07 p.m., respiratory failure claimed her as her chest stopped rising. Yamamoto noticed her blue-tinged face and realized his catastrophic error, but precious minutes had already passed. Emergency responders arrived at 9:15 p.m., attempting artificial respiration, but cardiac arrest had already begun. Cora Bellwether was pronounced dead at 9:43 p.m., another victim of humanity's dangerous relationship with deadly cuisine. The incident destroyed Yamamoto's legacy. His license was permanently revoked, forcing him to close his restaurant in disgrace. International scrutiny followed, sparking heated debates about fugu safety regulations. Cora's family pursued legal action against both the restaurant and Japanese authorities for inadequate oversight. The supplier faced charges for violating safety protocols by failing to test toxin levels during the algae bloom period. What began as a quest for culinary adventure ended in tragedy, reminding the world that some experiences carry the ultimate price. Her final blog post, scheduled to publish automatically, never appeared, a digital ghost of dreams cut short by one master's trembling hands. It was October 10, 2014 in Rhyl, Wales. Vera Williams, a 75-year-old grandmother, sat down for what should have been an ordinary breakfast. The morning light filtered through her kitchen window as she prepared a simple piece of toast, a meal she had made countless times before. But on this particular morning, that everyday breakfast would set in motion a chain of events leading to her death. As Vera bit into her toast, a sharp fragment broke off and scraped her throat as she swallowed. The initial discomfort seemed minor, just the kind of small irritation that happens occasionally when eating. She felt a scratch, a slight pain, but nothing that seemed worth worrying about. She continued her day, pushing the discomfort to the back of her mind, but the pain persisted. By afternoon, the scratching sensation in her throat had grown more noticeable. Concerned, Vera decided to visit the emergency room at Glan Clwyd Hospital. There, junior doctor Noor Ismail examined her throat, but found no visible injuries. With no obvious signs of trauma and Vera appearing otherwise healthy, the doctor sent her home, believing it was nothing serious. For the next 2 weeks, Vera lived with the continuous pain. The sharp piece of toast had done more damage than anyone realized. It had torn her esophagus, creating a small perforation that would gradually worsen. Each swallow, each movement of her throat aggravated the injury further. On October 23rd, the pain became unbearable. Vera returned to the hospital, this time seen by Dr. Adedeji Adeleke. She described the pain in her neck, but, crucially, didn't mention that she'd been suffering continuously since her previous visit 2 weeks earlier. failure. Without this critical information, Dr. Adalek diagnosed an infection and prescribed antibiotics, sending Vera home once again. The next day, Vera's condition deteriorated dramatically. She began coughing up blood, a dire warning sign that something was seriously wrong. Rushed to the hospital by ambulance, she finally received a CT scan that revealed the devastating truth. The toast had torn her esophagus, causing a rupture that allowed blood to leak into her intestines. This condition, an esophageal perforation, is extraordinarily rare, occurring in only about 3 cases per million people. Dr. Marion Hughes, a senior consultant who later reviewed the case, admitted she had never encountered such an injury in nearly 40 years of medical practice. For Vera, the diagnosis came too late. Her severe heart disease made surgery impossible. Doctors could only try to manage her condition as her body weakened. Within days, she passed away, the victim of what pathologist Dr. Andrew Dalton would later describe as a massive bleed due to the tear. The inquest into Vera's death revealed the tragic series of missed opportunities. None of the doctors who examined her could have reasonably suspected such a rare injury. Without clear signs of trauma, and with Vera not mentioning the continuous nature of her pain during her second visit, the doctors made what seemed like reasonable decisions based on the information they had. Coroner Nicola Jones noted one systemic failure that might have made a difference: the hospital's reliance on paper records. If electronic medical records had been in place, Dr. Adeleke might have been aware of Vera's previous visit and the original complaint about throat pain after eating toast. This information could have prompted further investigation. Vera's death stands as a sobering reminder of how something as mundane as a piece of toast can, in extraordinarily rare circumstances, become deadly. Her case, described as a 3 in a million tragedy, highlights the unpredictable fragility of human life. For the medical community, Vera's story serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of thorough patient histories and the value of modern record-keeping systems. Though the coroner acknowledged that even with better records, Vera's rare condition might still have been missed, her death prompted recommendations for electronic medical records to help prevent similar tragedies in the future. It was November 12, 2015, and the town of Tromsø in northern Norway was already settling into the long winter nights. Snow covered the roofs, and the harbor was dotted with fishing boats tied up for the season. Families stayed indoors to escape the cold, gathering around meals that often included fish caught earlier in the year. Among them was 59-year-old Lars Johansson, a lifelong fisherman. He had spent decades pulling whitefish from the cold Arctic waters and often preserved his catches at home. That year, he had filled several jars with fillets he had canned himself. The jars were kept on a shelf in his cellar, lined up beside potatoes and other stored food. Lars was proud of his home-canned fish and decided to serve it when he hosted a family dinner one evening. Around the table were his wife and adult daughter, both of whom had eaten his preserves many times before. He opened several jars, spooned the fish onto serving dishes, and passed them around with bread and butter. To him, it was a typical meal prepared traditionally. What he did not realize was that the fish had not been heated long enough or at a high enough temperature when he sealed the jars. Home canning requires pressure cooking to kill bacteria, and skipping that step can leave spores alive inside the food. In rare cases, those spores can produce botulinum toxin, one of the most dangerous substances known. For a while, dinner passed without incident. But a few hours later, Lars began to notice that something was wrong. His vision turned blurry, and he rubbed his eyes as though he couldn't focus. His wife noticed his eyelids starting to droop. When he tried to speak, his words came out slow and slurred. At first, the family thought he might be having a stroke. His daughter called emergency services while his condition continued to decline. He complained that his mouth felt dry, and swallowing became more difficult. His breathing grew heavy and he slumped into a chair. Paramedics arrived at the home not long after. They found Lars alert but struggling to keep his eyes open. His speech was weak, and his breathing was shallow. They gave him oxygen and loaded him onto a stretcher for transport. His wife rode along in the ambulance as they headed toward the hospital in Tromsø. Inside the ambulance, the paramedics placed an oxygen mask over his face and used a manual pump to keep air flowing. His chest was barely rising, and they prepared advanced gear in case his airway failed before arrival. At the hospital, doctors quickly recognized the signs of foodborne botulism. They prepared to place a breathing tube and connect him to a ventilator. Antitoxin was requested from the national stockpile, but even with rapid coordination, the process would take time. Within hours of arrival, Lars went into respiratory failure. Doctors attempted to resuscitate him, but the damage from the toxin was already severe. He was pronounced dead less than a day after the family meal. The sudden loss shocked the community. Lars had been known at the harbor for his long years on the water, and neighbors gathered to support his family. His funeral in Tromsø was attended by relatives, fellow fishermen, and friends who shared stories of his work and his time at sea. In the days that followed, Norwegian health officials investigated the case. Samples from the jars confirmed the presence of botulinum toxin. Authorities issued warnings through local media, reminding the public about the dangers of home canning without proper equipment. Leaflets were distributed with instructions on safe methods, especially for fish, which require higher heat and longer processing times than vegetables. Though cases like this are rare, the message was clear. A single mistake in food preservation can have fatal consequences. For those who knew Lars Johansson, the tragedy was a painful reminder that traditional practices must be paired with modern safety standards. It was July 14, 2024, in China. Pan Xiaoting, a 24-year-old mukbang live streamer, prepared for another marathon eating session. Her viewers were already gathering in the virtual space, eager to watch her consume an astonishing amount of food. Today's goal: 22 pounds of various dishes including seafood, chicken fingers, and chocolate cake. Pan had come a long way from her humble beginnings. Just a few years earlier, she had been working as a waitress, struggling to make ends meet. When she discovered the growing popularity of mukbang, a trend that originated in South Korea where hosts eat enormous quantities of food while interacting with viewers, she saw an opportunity. What started as a side hustle quickly became her full-time career as thousands, then tens of thousands of viewers tuned in to watch her eat. The transformation of her body told the story of her success. Once of average build, Pan now weighed approximately 660 pounds. Her massive frame was the result of countless streams where she would consume enough food for 10 people in a single sitting. Her fans sent virtual gifts worth real money, encouraging her to eat more, faster, longer. The financial rewards were substantial, enough for Pan to rent a separate studio apartment just for her streaming activities. On this fateful day, Pan's setup was meticulous. Multiple cameras captured different angles of her feast. Strategically placed microphones would pick up every chew, slurp, and swallow, sounds that her audience found oddly satisfying. The table before her was laden with dishes, platters of seafood glistening with sauce, mountains of fried chicken, bowls of noodles, and a decadent chocolate cake for dessert. As the stream began, Pan greeted her audience with her characteristic enthusiasm. "Hello everyone, today we have so much delicious food," she exclaimed, her face animated as she gestured to the spread before her. The chat immediately filled with messages of excitement and encouragement. Pan began with the seafood, picking up large pieces with her chopsticks and describing the flavors as she chewed. "The sauce is so rich and spicy," she told her audience between bites. She moved methodically through the dishes, barely pausing between servings. Her viewers watched in fascination as plate after plate was emptied. What her audience didn't know was that Pan had been hospitalized just months earlier for gastric bleeding, a direct result of her extreme eating habits. Her parents had begged her to stop the mukbang streams, warning her about the damage she was doing to her body. "What's the point of making more money?" her father had asked. "Do you know how much harm this does to your body?" Pan had dismissed their concerns. "I can bear the risk," she told them, convinced that the fame and financial rewards outweighed the health consequences. 3 hours into the stream, Pan had consumed nearly half of the food. Her breathing had become labored, but she continued eating, determined to meet her viewers' expectations. 5 hours in, she began to show signs of distress but pushed through, wiping sweat from her brow as she reached for more food. At the 7-hour mark, disaster struck. Mid-bite, Pan suddenly clutched her stomach, her expression changing from pleasure to pain. She tried to speak but could only manage a groan before slumping forward. Her viewers, initially thinking it was part of the act, soon realized something was terribly wrong as Pan remained motionless. The live stream continued to broadcast as frantic messages filled the chat. Some viewers called for help, trying to alert authorities, but it was too late. By the time emergency services reached her studio, Pan Xiaoting had passed away, her body finally succumbing to the extreme stress she had placed upon it. An An autopsy would later reveal the gruesome details. Her stomach was severely deformed and filled with undigested food. The lower part had ruptured, allowing contents to leak into her abdominal cavity. The official cause of death was listed as complications from extreme eating habits. Pan's tragic end sent shockwaves through the mukbang community and beyond, raising serious questions about the dangers of internet fame and the extreme lengths some will go to achieve it. What began as a path out of poverty had led to a public death, broadcast to the very audience that had encouraged her destructive behavior. It was June 8, 2014, when 16-year-old Astrid Thorne walked into Bubble Bliss Tea Shop in San Francisco's Mission District with her best friend Chloe Park. The petite 5'4" debate team captain had just finished her final SAT prep session and was buzzing with excitement about summer plans. Astrid possessed infectious enthusiasm that made her a formidable debate competitor. She dreamed of attending Stanford Law School and becoming a civil rights attorney. Her parents, both educators, had instilled in her a love of learning and adventurous spirit when trying new experiences. Tea shop owner Mrs. Kim Sato, a 45-year-old Korean immigrant, had built her business over 12 years, serving authentic bubble tea to San Francisco's diverse community. Her establishment was a popular after-school hangout known for creative flavors and generous portions. Astrid's eyes gravitated toward the Mega Pearl Challenge, featuring extra-large tapioca pearls measuring 15 millimeters in diameter. Always embracing challenges, she ordered the specialty drink despite Chloe's warnings about the oversized pearls. Mrs. Sato prepared the taro-flavored beverage with practiced efficiency. At 3:47 p.m., Astrid began drinking through the wide straw designed for bubble tea. Eager to impress Chloe, she attempted to consume multiple large pearls simultaneously. The undercooked tapioca spheres, harder than they should have been due to insufficient preparation, created an unexpected hazard. 7 extra-large pearls suddenly lodged in Astrid's throat, forming a complete blockage preventing airflow. Her face flushed red as she clawed desperately at her neck, eyes wide with terror. The pearls created a solid mass that couldn't be dislodged through coughing. Chloe's screams pierced the afternoon calm as Astrid collapsed onto the tiled floor, convulsing from oxygen deprivation. Mrs. Sato rushed over, attempting the Heimlich maneuver desperately, but her efforts proved insufficient against the obstruction. College student Alex Chen dialed 911 while other patrons gathered around. Some were inappropriately filmed with smartphones as Astrid's lips turned blue. The tapioca pearls absorbed saliva, swelling and making the blockage more complete. Astrid's body went into violent spasms as her brain was deprived of oxygen. By 3:52 p.m., she had lost consciousness entirely. Paramedics arrived at 3:58 p.m., attempting emergency procedures to clear the obstruction, but the pearl mass was too firmly lodged. At 4:31 p.m., Astrid Thorne was pronounced dead from asphyxiation caused by tapioca pearl obstruction, her promising future cut short by what should have been a simple after-school treat. The aftermath proved devastating. Bubble Bliss closed permanently following health department investigations revealing improper food preparation protocols. Mrs. Sato faced criminal charges for serving inadequately prepared products posing unreasonable consumer risks. The incident sparked widespread bubble tea industry regulation changes, requiring warning labels on drinks with large pearls and mandatory shop owner training regarding proper tapioca preparation techniques. Astrid's heartbroken parents established the Astrid Thorne Food Safety Foundation, educating teenagers about dining hazards and promoting safer food service practices. Chloe required months of therapy to process witnessing her best friend's sudden death during what should have been a celebratory afternoon. The tragedy reminded everyone that seemingly innocent treats can pose unexpected dangers when proper safety protocols aren't followed. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.